mostly in English because I think this is open to IEEE students all across Canada. And we just want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. Mais si jamais il y a des questions, n'hésitez pas si vous avez besoin de clarification. Really, in either language as we're talking, feel free to stop us and ask for any clarification, and feel free to express yourself in your own language too. Vraiment, il y a pas de problème. Vous pouvez vous exprimer dans votre la langue que vous voulez. So, merci beaucoup. Aujourd'hui, toute l'idée qu'on va présenter, what we're going to present is this idea of producing scientific articles in times of COVID. And we're going to introduce ourselves right now, but I just want you to know that we're not experts in COVID or particularly the situation that we're in now, but we both have expertises in helping graduate students with scientific writing and publication in the process of those things as well. So we're here to work with you today and discuss all kinds of issues. Donc, ça va être un peu interactif. We're going to have some interactive components, and we really would like as much as possible for people to participate. And we want to learn also what your situation is in terms of all of this as well. So my name is Proshan Lala. Je suis un agent de recherche. I'm a research officer that works with the library, and I work on a program called le Service d'aide à la rédaction d'articles, the service to help people writing scientific articles. I'll explain what that is in a second, but my main goal is to work with graduate students and help them with scientific communication. And I meet with a lot of students, and we do a lot of group activities, and that's what I do. Je sais pas, Judith, si tu veux introduire.
Merci. So my name is Judith Boissonneau, and I'm a librarian at ETS. And my work is, doing a little bit of everything a librarian does. I hope you are getting to know your own librarian in your own institution, because there is a lot of help we can bring to you dealing with your studies, but also promoting the visibility of your scientific papers or other type of contribution. And that's more my expertise at ETS. I'm working a lot with a professor when it's time to apply for fundings, to increase the visibility, the impact, to talk about the benefits that are linked to their research. So like Proshan said, we are not expert on the publication during COVID time, because changes are happening very quickly, and it's going on right now. So we decided to make this this workshop very interactive, so you can discuss and share comments and decide what you want the publication landscape to become as you are part of it.
It's an extremely good point, because as researchers, you're an active part of that landscape. So it's very important to know that your voice is important, and there's changes that you can do as well to affect it as well. So I mentioned Sarah, the Service d'aide à la rédaction d'articles, and actually, before I do that, I'm going to just explain a little bit about what we're going to do today. A plan for today's. So Judith and I presented ourselves. I'm just going to talk a little bit about Sarah, but then we're just going to do an interactive activity to get to know you a little bit more as well. And then I'm going to give a brief presentation. Ça va être vraiment assez éclair, about 20 minutes on collaborative writing. And I chose this topic because during COVID, it's a very difficult thing to be collaborating with all the isolation going on. So I thought that this was an important topic to bring up in writing when you're writing with co-authors, and what to think about, what is important as well. Then we're going to discuss with mainly with Judith helping us lead these discussions on the trends that are going on in IEEE journals and other things during times of COVID as well. Talking a little bit about choosing where to publish and reliability of publication sources, even for citations and things like this as well. The idea of publishing negative results, which is an important aspect that we'll get into, and we want to get your opinions as well on this. And also the challenges that are very, very particular to COVID, and we want to hear from you as well about these things. So that's kind of a general idea. Ça va prendre à peu près 90 minutes. It's going to be about 90 minutes if we go, and depending on how much time we have, we'll adjust for different things. I think the other aspect is that we will share the presentation with participants afterwards, so you'll have access to this afterwards as well. If we have time, we're going to try out a little tool. We can't do the breakout rooms today, but we might do a little test with another collaborative tool called GatherTown as well. Donc, we presented ourselves. I just want to say, for those that don't know, the SARA is a service that's part of the library at ETS. We call it a service, but it really is more of a community with students, with researchers, librarians helping each other with scientific communication. And we do a lot of group activities. That's the idea of getting feedback on your work, la rétroaction. It's a very hard thing to do, especially as a young researcher, and especially hard during COVID and when you're isolated as well. So you can always go to the SARA website to find out more information. And there's also a Facebook, you're going to have this link. So there's a Facebook link as well if you want to find out more about more activities that go on with SARA. I'm involved, Judith is extremely involved with SARA things, but there's a lot of students and professors and everybody else that's there as well. So we've talked a lot about ourselves. What I want to do actually is launch a Kahoot, which is a little interactive game, basically, to find out a little bit more about you. Are you seeing my browser right now? That's there with, okay, perfect. So if you go to the instructions will be here right now. You can use your telephone, or you can use your another browser window, and you can just go to kahoot.it and enter in the number that you're seeing here, the pin at the top that's here. And I'm just going to do a little quiz to find out a little bit of information about who's here right now. So we're just going to wait for people to join. Comme j'ai dit, vous pouvez utiliser votre téléphone. You can use your phone. You can use another browser. And you go to kahoot.it and enter in the game pin that is there. Okay. On a notre premier participant. I set the name generation to be on, so that is just automatic names that are made there as well, which can be quite amusing. On a 3 personnes. I'm just going to wait to see if anybody else joins. Prairie Tiger is there. Just wait another minute or two for people to join as I see people figuring it out on their phones. Radiant Sphinx. C'est quoi en français un sphinx radiant? Red Lark. Zany Boa. Okay, so we have 7 people that are that have joined right now, and if you still haven't joined, I think I'll put in the chat the link, and you can join in for that as well. So I'll start. The idea of this really is on my screen. You're going to see the question and either the responses you can choose, which are usually color-coded, or where you can enter in things. And you look at my shared screen to see what the question is, and then make your response. There's only just a few questions. We want to find out a little bit about you guys as well. So I'll start it off right now. So here we go. Check your phones as things are going. Okay, so please type in your research topic. However you describe it, you don't have that many characters, but what are kind of the key words in your research topic that's there? J'aurais dû partager mon son. I should have shared my sound because there's very intense music in my headphones. Okay, there are people that are going. This is good. Okay. Also, some very, very interesting topics that are coming up here. So IEEE, of course, electronics engineering, but we have people from wireless communication, fast charging stations, I think, for electric cars, machine learning. I'm surprised that that's not gigantic because there's often a lot of people working on machine learning, but medical imaging, which is part of machine, there's a lot of machine learning that's used as well. Load balancing for networks, telecom, optical wireless comm, polar codes, error correction. This is very interesting. We have a good range of backgrounds of people that are here, which is also very, very good. When we're doing any kind of activities with scientific communication, it actually helps to have people from different backgrounds to get feedback when we're having discussions as well. So I'll go on to the next question, and this is totally anonymous, remember. So we want to get a little bit of, you can select more than one response. We want to find out your experience with scientific writing. So, si vous avez déjà publié, si vous avez jamais publié, si vous êtes en train de rédiger, or if really scientific writing, it's what is that? What is, you know, if it's an astounding thing to you. Okay, we have 8 answers. There's 30 seconds left for people to enter in their answers. Of course, there's no, the poll link, sure. Somebody asked for the poll link. You should be, here we go. And you should be able to join, for the people that are asking, you should be able to join the poll. Your own. Okay, so there's actually quite a few people that have published a scientific article before. It depends, it changes very much depending on the audience that we have as well. And there's nobody that's never published before. There's people that are in the middle of writing, and I'm glad that people know what scientific writing is as well. Perfect. So the very, very last question, this is just, it's an open-ended question. It's just, what are your biggest difficulties, vos défis, avec la rédaction scientifique? What do you find hardest about things? And this will help us a little bit even during today's activity to kind of maybe target those areas as well. There's no wrong answers, of course. It's about 40 seconds left. Reste 40 secondes pour entrer une réponse, pour mettre une réponse. Just 20 seconds left. You can even type a one-word answer if that's what you're seeing, what you're thinking of. So 5 seconds. Okay. So we have these answers. Let's take a look at the types of things that are there. Okay. So summarizing latest work. So literature review. This is actually a very interesting and very difficult problem. And we have workshops on this topic as well, but it's very, very good. Being concise, limited pages, that's a very important topic as well, and a question we get all the time. Mathematical derivation, so somebody that's working very much in theoretical stuff, needing to get that out there. Motivation, so I know procrastination, writer's block, how much to write about a topic. These are all very common problems that people have. Right language for expressing novelty and contribution. That's very interesting because you want to be sure to not be overstating what your contribution is, but to be making it clear to the reader that you have a contribution and that you think that it's a contribution as well. Clarity, this is expressing yourself in ideas, that being clear and finding professional sentences. So having a scientific style for writing as well. This is very interesting. Getting organized. Big one as well. The distinction. Okay, that's interesting. The difference between an abstract and what you put in the introduction. I can very generally tell you that the abstract is a summary of your work, and the introduction is setting up the context of previous work that leads to your work as well. So there's a little bit of that's there, but it's something we can discuss as well. The explaining things that looks obvious to you, but maybe not to the reader. This is where peer feedback is a very important thing as well, to get others' opinions, because you know your own research, but it's very hard to know what the reader's thinking about. And okay, so it's there's so two people have talked about derivations and proofs. So this is very interesting, and that is also something that it helps a lot to talk to your colleagues about issues like this, to see what they've done before and to read. A big part of writing is actually reading as well. Great. Thanks very much for this. This is, I'll stop my share right here. It gives us a bit of an idea of the type of challenges and things that you have. And as I mentioned, during our presentation and everything else going on, feel free to interrupt us, ask questions. We're not that many people, so you can unmute yourself if you like, or you can write in the chat as well. And especially when we're having the interactive activities that are going on. Donc, je vais partager mon écran encore. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to just do a quick presentation on collaborative writing. And as I mentioned, the reason for doing this is collaboration is a big part of writing generally, but especially now, it's an issue that's being brought up a lot from students that come to see me about how do I collaborate when there's isolation and everything going on. So we hope that part of this will help you in those aspects, and you can ask questions that are there as well. Donc, on a fait le caout. Maintenant, je vais parler un peu de rédaction collaborative. I'm going to present very much just 10 rules. They're not really rules, they're suggestions on collaborative writing that comes from a particular paper, but it's a good way to think about the aspects that are important. Comme j'ai dit, I'm gonna go pretty quickly through these ideas. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt me, but we can always discuss it in a group afterwards as well. Donc, la première règle, the first rule is the idea of building your writing team, which is an extremely important thing. D'habitude, c'est au début. It's usually at the beginning of the process, but it can happen of your writing process, but it can happen at different stages as well. The idea is to build on the expertise of the co-authors, of the people that are there. It's usually choosing who's on the team is initiated by the research project leader, but it should be very clear what are the expectations of people that are going to be co-authors when starting your writing and having the team doing it. And if you need other expertise, to be ready to bring in other people as well. It's also very, very important to be clear about what it constitutes to be a co-author. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that so that people are aware of what they're getting into. And usually it helps to have a shared list with contact information for all the co-authors and everything else. And to keep track of who is involved throughout the writing process, to also increase the involvement of your co-authors as well. And there's different roles that people can have. I'll speak a little bit about that. So build your writing team wisely. Number 2 is this idea of leadership. C'est vraiment quelque chose de base. It's really like the leadership aspect when you're writing is very important. So if you take the lead, you need to provide leadership because you're talking about a team, and especially if it's a large project with lots of people there. D'habitude, c'est le premier auteur. It's often the first author who is the team lead, but it's not necessarily true that way. Usually it's the contact person that's keeping the group on track, keeping the writing going forward, that's managing the writing process all the way to publication, making sure that authors have registered on the site and given their consent, all of this kind of stuff. And it's also someone that provides a lot of communication and feedback as well, to acknowledge the contributions of the group and what's going on. The leader also has to be very flexible because deadlines are sometimes going to be broken, and to make sure that that things stay on track as much as possible. And you should try to have all voices heard as a leader, but of course it's a balance also of making decisions and making sure that the content and the structure of the manuscript and everything moves forward. So the last thing that I will say is that a good leader should also know when to delegate tasks. And often as a leader, we tend to take on the whole writing task on our own. It's important to know to try and delegate tasks and have, if it's data analysis or things like this, to be sure to make the workload is shared as well. A data management plan, gestion des données, it's something that we actually get asked a lot about by students and professors these days. It's important to be thinking about data, and it's important to be thinking about the plan of how you're going to be managing that data. When you have the references, there will be some links on tools to help you do this all. But with multi-authored papers, there is often, there could be large data sets involved. People could be doing different analysis and code and everything else that's done that way. So it's important to think about curating the data, sharing it, version control, archiving, all of this kind of stuff that comes about. And you should be aware that nowadays a lot of funding agencies are also requiring that there is some kind of a data management plan to be able to publish using their funds. So it's something to be important to be thinking about. The authorship guidelines, I think Judith is going to talk a little bit about this idea, and we're going to get into it a bit later as well. So I won't spend so much time because there's different roles that authors can have in this way. But I think the thing that I should emphasize the most is you should be transparent. I know personally of colleagues, other people, that there's been misunderstandings at the very end of the writing process about author order, if somebody's going to be included in an author, what their role was and everything. So the earliest that you can start and discuss this and make it as clear as possible so there's no misunderstandings when it's time to actually publish the work, it's very important. And keeping track of what authors do is a good way of doing that as well. Some journals actually even require you to put in what the author contributions are nowadays. So it's a very, very important thing to be thinking about. Writing strategies. Now, there's a lot of, often this is a very organic thing, the way that things come about, but there are different writing strategies. So I'm going to quickly show this figure. And actually in the chat, once I've described them, I want people to write down if they've used one of these strategies or if they'd like to use one of these strategies. So on the left, we have the most collaborative types, and on the right, it's the most individual. And the bars in gray are talking about external forces. The wider the bar, the more that force is there, which is often it could be an obstacle, while the bars that are in white are things that you have to gain from using these strategies. So a group writing is where everybody is involved in the whole writing process, all aspects. It's completely equal that way. Subgroup writing is where you have the manuscript that's divided in terms of expertise, and a subgroup is responsible for each part of that manuscript that's there. A core writing group is where out of all the co-authors, there's a core group and they're responsible for the whole manuscript that's there. A scribe is where somebody is basically taking notes, attending all the meetings, seeing all the discussions, and then is responsible for incorporating all the inputs. So it's all you're a funnel for everything that happens. And then a principal writer is someone that just completely takes the lead and just writes it all, does it all, and then after the fact gets input from their co-authors. And as you can see in the table, there, when you're on the right and there's more collaborative, there's a lot of communication that's needed. There's different expertise that are covered, but it's often as the group size gets bigger, it gets harder and harder. Often it takes longer to publish because you have a lot more input from different authors that are there as well. So it could be a longer process, but there's other benefits as well with this. So if you could, in the chat, could you write down, maybe it's multiple ways that you've written, if you've been part of group writing or you would like to be part of group writing, subgroup writing where it's core by expertise, a core writing group where it's only a small number of people that are writing the whole manuscript, scribe where you're the person that's funneling in all the input from co-authors, or a principal writer where you're fully responsible for writing, but then you're getting feedback from writers as well. You can just put this, you can put that in the chat, or you can actually unmute yourself if you have experience doing that as well.
We often do jokes at the library that Prashant has a very charismatic voice, very radiophonic voice, but it's nice in the workshop to hear other voice also. So if you're not too shy to open your mic, please do so.
Perfect. Okay, Ishat, principal writer. And this is, I would say, as a PhD student, it's either principal writer or scribe that is often the situation as well. Judith, you make me want to do it in a radio announcer voice. We've got a principal writer here.
For the other participant, maybe you are in the process of writing at the moment. You might not have published yet, but what do you think would be the main goal where you think you should fit if you're at the beginning of a writing experience? You can also answer this question this way.
Sure, like put in maybe what you would prefer to do. Thanks, Sandy. Okay, so principal writer as well. Okay, so somebody has been part of group writing. That's very interesting, actually, because group writing can be a very difficult process as well. Young has said, I would like to be more group writing, but currently working as an individual writer, this is often just the reality of the way, the organic way that things go on as well. Principal writer. I see a lot of principal and individual writers that are there. And the little editorial comment that I will make on that is that it's unfortunate because communication, the whole idea is to communicate with people. You're doing scientific writing to talk to other people. So the best way to make it better is to have input when you're doing the process as well. So I think that group writing things are often harder, but then the final product doesn't need as many revisions as well when doing things as well. But it's a very difficult process to manage, especially with the politics of being a student and dealing with professors and co-authors that are there and having them deal with deadlines and things. Perfect. Thanks very much for that. You can keep in the chat talking about what your experience is with that as well.
May I just ask a question before we go on about your previous slide? I'm just curious if any participant had a change in their way they used to write in group or as a principal writer affected by the pandemic, by the COVID situation. Does anyone seen a change in their the writing project they were doing before the pandemic and during the pandemic?
And if you've seen no change, you can write no change, or you can undo your microphone as well if you're in the middle of writing, in the middle of.
Maybe we'll touch a little bit more about the impact of the COVID after.
Okay. And a huge change. Okay, Sadia. It's okay. So it's interesting. I see there's different, and part of it maybe even might be the way that people interacted before with their co-authors, with their supervisor. Sometimes some students are very much left on their own to write. Other times there's very interactive supervisors, and it depends, whether it's good or bad. It's interesting. So that it's very interesting comment. So there's people have had huge changes, trouble with in-person meetings as well. Discussions are much harder. Looking forward to group writing. Yeah, this is thanks for this input. It's good for us to know as well, because we see all kinds of different situations with students, and we are going to talk a little bit more about these things a bit later in the workshop as well. One aspect that in collaborative writing, especially in a situation like this where there's isolation, is to choose the right tools to help you manage different authors. Even if it's just one author, the one co-author who's your supervisor, is to make sure that you can be working together on something. I'm going to talk about some different tools, but in the chat, if you can talk about the type of digital tools that you use to collaborate when you're writing. And it's interesting because, Sadia, what you just said is exactly that. The Zoom, we think of it as this, we can just be talking to people and doing things, but the limitations of screen, everything else, it becomes very, very, very difficult often for people to use what might seem evident in other domains, just to share a text or something to use. And I'm wondering if other people have found other tools that they use for collaboration. I'm going to talk about a few ones as people are writing in the chat. There's things like Google Docs, or even shared folders in Dropbox and things like this. If you're writing in LaTeX, there's things like Overleaf that people often find very useful, because you can be chatting and editing at the same time, as you can with different types of things like that as well. There's different things like LibreOffice and whatever that also let you collaborate on different documents as you're doing things. There's also ways to do project management. You might have heard of things like Trello or Slack, which is a chatting application, Atlassian, project management tools like Teams and everything else, that are different ways that you can interact with people. But of course, as people are noting here as well, like the in-person thing is a very, very important thing to have as well. This is the one thing that's lacking. I see that it's much easier to be contacting people in person, to be discussing things, and there's a lot less misunderstandings as well. But I'm seeing some of the things that I've mentioned as well that people use. It's important to choose tools that people are comfortable with as well, and that they will use. So it's one of the important things that are here as well. I'll go a little bit quickly through the rest of the presentation, because we want to get to the other topics. The idea of timelines, of course, are very important, and it's often the leader that does it. But be prepared for there being changes in timelines with authors' own commitments and everything else that's going on as well. The idea of being transparent is very important. I can't emphasize it enough, because no matter what, as transparent as you try to be, as clear as you try to be, there's always going to be some misunderstandings if there's a big group of people that are co-authoring a paper as well. And as some people have pointed out, that in-person discussions help often to clarify potential points of disagreement or things like this, but it's very, very hard now as well. So to try and be as, with your documentation and everything else, keeping track of things, trying to be as clear as possible as well. This idea of cultivating equity, diversity, and inclusion it's a thing that people don't think about, but it's important that every voice, if you've chosen for somebody to be a co-author, there's a reason for them to be a co-author. So make sure that their voices are heard, and it ends up adding to the manuscript as well. I won't talk that much more about this right now because we want to get to the other activities. But the last thing that we're going to talk a little bit about too is consider the ethical implications of being a co-author. It's one of the things that often we just think, oh, I need to publish. I can, if my name can be on this, I analyze some data, I'm going to be there. It's great. But when your name is associated with a paper, with an article that's been published, it's out in the scientific world. And from then on, your name is associated, having given the stamp of approval on the work that is there. So try to be very scrupulous and to make sure that you're okay with having your name on an author, where it's being published, the way the data has been analyzed, everything else. Your stamp of approval. And maybe we can talk a bit later about this with Judith, but there's examples of problems that have happened with this in the past of people's names on papers that they regretted having them there as well. So these are just, as I said, 10 concepts that are important to be thinking about. The references are, we're going to share the presentation right here, and you can go into much further depth in what is talked about there as well. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right here. I just wanted to see, are there any questions or discussions about what I presented on collaborative writing? I know it was very quick of what I did. I think people have some. Yeah. This is Christian, it's a very interesting point that you bring out. It's often a solitary path, and we try as much as possible to break the fact that it's solitary. With Sarah and in the library doing group activities, but even going into labs and trying to have activities that are related to scientific communication. But with COVID, it really has made it very difficult. And one of the labs that we do activities with at the Serchum Hospital, we used to have in-person meetings, doing some activities, what we call a séance d'étude, a study session, where people use timed, they have objectives and they do timed work and then take breaks and discuss things. We moved it to Zoom for a while. We did it for 2-3 months on Zoom, and it was working, but then it got very tiring. Zoom is a very, very tiring thing. So we started using, and maybe we'll have time later, but if not, I'll send you the link, an application called gather.town. And it looks a little bit like a video game, but when you go, you can go next to people and their cameras light up and you can talk to people. And my wife has gone to a conference where she saw poster presentations using this and everything. There are some tools that are starting to come out for helping people collaborate in an environment that's not as oppressive as something like Zoom as well. I know I find it very, very tiring to be on Zoom all day, and it's incredible that just using this other platform helps a little bit in relieving the fatigue that's there as well. That's interesting. In-space chat. Thanks, Sharan. I'm not aware of that. I know that people have used Discord, which is really a gaming chat platform, but is also, I'll actually put it in the, have put it, have used it before. We've used it when teaching, when giving workshops in classes as well. I don't know if there's any other ideas of collaborative tools that are there as well, but feel free to post them or to take off your mic as well if you have something. Yes, Sharan, please.
Yes, I was going to share about inspace.chat.
Yes.
I was a little skeptical of it first, then I actually tried it. And the second time I tried it, I invited about 10 of my colleagues. And it has something proximity in it. So two people can go off and we only hear each other. Nobody else hears us. Then we can come back and join the group. And I'll also share that this was invented by a college professor because she found Zoom teaching wasn't working. She was quite surprised that 100% of the class liked it. So she developed it further and she started a small company. And now about 50 colleges are using it. They've ditched Zoom and they're using this because it allows you to make groups of 2 or 3. And you feel like you're in a room of your own and you can see each other, and it has tools to sketch and stuff like that. So when it comes to collaboration, I tried it 2 weeks ago. I liked it. So they give you a free trial, and it integrates well with, I think, Google Chat, Jamboard, and many other tools that are out there.
That's great. I'm definitely going to explore it and see if it's something that we can use for our own activities as well, because this proximity chatting is something that has come up often, I know, with people. And I don't know if people are aware of also Mozilla Hubs, which is a virtual environment where you can have an avatar. It's a little bit more elaborate, but they also have proximity chatting so that if you're in a room, you can be talking to somebody, and if somebody's far away, and there's presentations and things that are there. And you brought up Jamboard, and there's other tools as well for sketching and drawing that people find very useful, where you can be creating Venn diagrams, flow charts, mind maps, and things like this as well. So it's Sharan, thank you very, very much for sharing that. I'm definitely going to check out this tool as well. So I don't know, Judith, I don't know if you want to talk about some other topics as well. I'll let you.
Yes, well, just to come back on the sharing that we did about tools, it's a good exercise to do, to discuss with other colleagues, maybe from other lab or research department. We heard a lot of story of people that haven't really noticed much more difficulties to communicate, because in their labs they were used to work already with different kind of tools to ease the communication, because they had researcher maybe in other department, other university, other country already, and they have the expertise of using those tools. So it's really good to discuss about because there is so many tools on the market, and it's hard to know which one to pick. And often you try one and it's not really what I want to do, or it's too expensive. So building on what other colleagues might have tried in the past, it's a really good. We'll continue. If you think about other tools, you can add them in the chat, and maybe at the end we can just make a wrap up of the list of tools people share together.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So now, well, we wanted to do the other part a little bit more with discussion and all that. Maybe if we knew about InSpace before, we would have set up something. I'm just not sure with the time. It's almost 11. Shall we take a break right now?
Do you want to take like a little 5-minute break maybe, and then continue at 12 o'clock, or were you thinking a bit longer?
Do you think it's a good to
maybe
we can try GatherTown maybe?
Yeah, just that's a good idea maybe. So I'll put a link of a tool that maybe, because we're discussing tools, and as far as I know, you should be, except you're going to have to mute yourself, I think, on one of the platforms. Gather.town, which is one of these tools for collaboration. And this is basically it was a university campus that is set up, and you can go in and move around a little bit. And when you come next to people, your camera will light up and you can speak to them. It's sort of like being in a conference as well. So maybe what we can do is we'll let you, should we give you 5-10 I'm just thinking with timing, maybe 5 minutes to, or 10?
10 minutes.
Okay,
If
so
people
let's,
wants to go get a cup of coffee or something.
right. Perfect. So why don't we take 10 minutes? So we'll start again at 11:05, and you can go into GatherTown, explore it a little bit, and talk with the people that are here, or go get a coffee, go to the bathroom, and everything else, and then we can come back at 11:05 for things.
And if you leave the Zoom meeting, you can always use the same link to connect.
Right,
If you
to come
switch to GatherTown and you lose the Zoom meeting.
Exactly. So we'll see you in 9 minutes now. Perfect.
So it's 11:05. I don't know if people had problem to enter Gather Town. We were not too many. It was not too crowded. So if you had some difficulties, let us know. We'll give the link also at the end of the workshop for others who would like to go have a look.
Yeah, we at the very end, maybe we can do something so that you can join in and explore a bit more. That particular space in Gather Town is a little bit more of exploring, but you could create all kinds of things like separate rooms, like in a conference where you go talk to people and do things as well. So I think what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to do another little quiz to find out a little bit more about what with COVID, what is going on with you guys as well. And I think this time I'll make sure to share my sound.
So some of you already share some impression of the writing part. It's not as easy as a principal author or as a group author. It's not as easy to communicate, but we would like to know in a more general way. Well, I guess if you start the Kahoot,
sure, we can.
We'll see the question.
So it will be the same thing where you need to go. I think this time, can you hear a little bit of music maybe?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Where you go to Kahoot, IT, and I'm just going to share. So you can join there. I think maybe some people might still be on break. I'm going to see where people are coming down. Ah, okay, we have people. Perfect. Excellent, we have 3 players that are here. Bold Swan, j'aime ça. I'm just going to wait a minute or two, maybe just a minute more to make sure everybody has had a chance to join. You can use your telephone or you can use another browser to join, but you're going to need to see my screen share to know what the questions are. Okay.
Kahoot is another tool that we can use to try to communicate better or try new strategy to stimulate maybe brainstorming activities. It requires a little bit more planning, but it's an interesting tool.
It's funny because, in something as simple as writing, well, I say simple, something as complicated as writing a manuscript, people are turning to all kinds of other tools to try and break the difficulty, the monotony, and everything else that's associated with writing. So it seems a bit silly to be using something like Kahoot, but it helps a lot of the time just because there are other things like brainstorming and word clouds and everything else that you can do here. So it's a good idea to explore different things. So we have 7 people. I think I'm going to start it, and this is just basically we wanted to get a little bit of your ideas related to what's going on with COVID and writing. So you talked about your biggest difficulty with writing, but now we want to know during COVID, what is the biggest break, the biggest obstacle for you, particular maybe to COVID right now? There's about 30 seconds left. You can write one word, small phrases as well.
if you think about too many difficulties, pick one, pick the major one.
Okay. Oh, so we had all 7 answers. So let's see what these answers are. Motivation to work at home. Okay, that's it's something that we hear a lot about being at home and working. And this is, I've heard colleagues talk about starting the day where they on purpose have to bring their computer onto where they're going to use it and everything and open it up to make it very, very separate from their personal life, because it's this big thing going on. Not being able to meet, yes, I mean, I think that comes up a lot. Communication that's going on, which is of course an important part of scientific communication. Procrastination. And we can talk a little bit about that, like tools that we use, like this. I was talking about the study sessions that you can do with friends as well, to be working together using this technique that's called the Pomodoro technique. I can put it, and I can actually, when I send the slides, I can actually include some links to that as well, that helps with motivation as well. Time, that's very interesting. A professor being more busy than before, and meetings. I think so. You see, meetings has come up a lot of the time. These are all very, very, very real problems that are definitely going on, and I think a lot of students are finding, these same problems as well. The next question, I think somebody just came into the room, so I'm just going to post again.
Yeah, while you do that, I'll just comment on this managing the time. Professor is more busy as before. Yes, of course, with dealing with the virtual class animation and all that. I'm just curious if some of you have found some creative way to communicate, to change the usual channel of communication with your supervisor, for instance, and try new strategy to ease the communication. If you have some advice or things that have changed, you can share with your colleague. Or maybe the change was brought by the supervisor, finding a way maybe to organize group meetings or have a way to supervise students in a different way.
So it's usually, I see Sandy's written, it's usually via Skype or Zoom. So kind of these technologies that are there. I know at one of the labs at ETS, the Gather Town that we just showed, they've actually set up a replica of their lab space and their floor. And every morning people join in and chat and do everything. And I think electrical engineering at ETS has also, I'm going to find the link and put it here, have also set up using this Gather Town as well, a site where you can go and speak to people. So yeah, there's different things. If you have any other ideas or comments, feel free to put it in the chat. Maybe I'll go to the next question, which is a little bit of the opposite. We want to know, COVID has been very difficult for all kinds of reasons that are there for doing scientific, writing and communication, doing your work. Is there anything that has changed that has actually helped you during COVID, that has actually accelerated your work? So this next question is related to that. What has been, and if it's not something that's changes, what has helped you during COVID with your writing? Or you could even talk about your research project in general, about things that have helped.
We often talk about the negative impact of COVID. Now it's time to think more positively about the change.
So there's 30 seconds left if you want to put something. Maybe it's something that you were using already before that you found particularly useful during this time.
Maybe it's a task, doing a task that you always used to neglect because less important, but because you were prevented from going to the lab or doing other activities, now you have time to do this task.
Okay, so we have quite a few answers here. There's 10 answers, so let me show them as well. I've heard this before, going running. It's very important. It's interesting. I've heard a lot of people say that, and it's a very interesting one. Having more time to fix problems because you've got the time alone. That's interesting. Self-restriction, time. It's true. Travel time. We're not commuting as much, so there is that little thing that's saved. Now, of course, it also means that you have to be immediately available a lot of the times as well. Flexibility. I've heard a lot of students talk about this as well. Being there, I totally. When somebody says nothing, honestly, I completely understand. It's true. Like something, it's just been too much. That's there as well. Exercise again comes up. Limitations of vacation holiday. I guess maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. But you're just being forced to work. I've actually heard other people talk about that. And a bit of the opposite of having extra time to put for other activities with it and getting stronger. I guess just in general, even I'd say mentally, physically as well. Flexibility, that has come out a lot from people, I think. And being able to work in different environments. A timetable, that is very interesting because even the talk about not having a difference between your work environment and your home environment, sometimes setting a timetable and having that difference actually makes a difference. And nothing, again, I completely, I understand that. And a lot of people feel the same way as you as well, that it really has not been good, that we want to get back to normal. I think that's a very, very valid point that way. So thanks very much for these reflections on things. I think that's what I had for the questions that way. I'll stop the share. And then, I don't know if Judith, you wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll keep going actually in the second part. I want to make some link between the 10 rules that Prashant presented quickly at the beginning of the workshop, but link it to other maybe strategy, topic, things you need to be aware of when you're part of the scientific publication world. So the first thing is, with COVID, we had a lot of new opportunity. Engineers had a lot of new opportunity to get involved in some emerging research area related to technology to help with the COVID situation. So with this new opportunity, you have to be very quick at catching those opportunities, using the terms that are more trendy, the buzzword around a topic. It's a skill that you need to have when you're doing research, where you're involved in publishing, thinking about the keywords that you will use for searching for literature, but also to give more visibility to your contribution. So I'll just do a quick example with actually some trendy words that were published in the past year in more engineering journals. I'll use a Scopus because it's nice to have a scientific publication database, which is multidisciplinary. Because when you want to take advantage of see what kind of trend is related to what kind of research is related to a new term, a new trend in research, you want to see maybe in other discipline how the topic is discussed. So I'll use Scopus. We can use also IEEE. It's a good thing to know about the different research recently. So I'm going to use just as an example, contact tracing. Maybe some of you are working on some technology related to this topic. So just a really quick search, searching in the article title, abstract keywords. These are part of your article when you're writing, that you need to be very careful about the wording that you use. Is it wording that is really specific to your little group of experts in the field, but is it also wording that will attract people interested in a more general way about the problematic? So you need to address those two levels of precision in your term. So contract tracing, maybe you work on this topic, but you wouldn't use this expression to talk about your research. You would use more precise term maybe. So let's just see how many results we get. Keywords, okay, let's try again. Sometimes Scopus is not collaborating. So we see that we have more than 600 terms, and I like to use the feature of analyzing search results just to have a quick overview of the increase around a term. So when I talk about buzzword, trendy terms, you can see here that obviously, because of the situation right now, there was an increase of research with this term in the past year. Not too many publications, let's say in the last, since 2000, but a huge increase. So you know that it's maybe a buzzword, maybe you will have access to increased funding. Think about those words. You will also have a quick overview of who are the main journals publishing. So if you're interested more about research related to engineering, you can take advantage of some of the filter here, like the category of the journals, research area here. So you can decide, I'm going to limit to category more related to computer science, engineering, and material science, like that, and then limit to topic research that is more related to engineering. And again, you can analyze more precisely what was the term related to the research, what was the author keyword that we can extract from that group of publication, but also the control vocabulary. And maybe you're not all familiar with control vocabulary. So now I have a smaller selection, about 200 documents, research about contact tracing published in Engineering Journal. And I'm going to have a look very quickly about the keywords that I can extract from that group of publication. And now you can have a very quick overview, which are the main buzzword, the main term. It's the entrance when you search in a database for scientific publication, you use those terms to retrieve relevant publication for your need. So you can see very quickly which one are the terms. Is it the terms that might be profitable for you to use in your abstract, in your title, in your author keywords also? You have to think about that. I don't know, Prashan, if you wanted to add something about the writing process and the...
Well, I think it's in one thing that we emphasize a lot of the time is getting across the right messages and everything else that you have for your problem statement to make sure people understand. Another part of it is making sure you're using terminology that's consistent with the field. And reading is an important part of it, but as Judith is showing, exploring what is there is also important. And it's good to know that, especially during something like a pandemic like COVID, there are a lot of buzzwords that are going to pop up that are going to attract a lot of interest. As Judith was saying, a lot of government funding. I know I have colleagues that work at the National Research Council, and like their projects switched from things that they were working on to things like contact tracing and everything else that was there. You should always be looking to see if your research might have an angle that is relevant. It might be something as simple as that you're working on a machine learning algorithm that's you're using some completely other data, but maybe there is a relevance for contact tracing. So you could always look to see how you can be publishing your work in a journal or something that's more related to that, or maybe a short presentation, and being very honest, saying that you haven't tested this data on contact tracing or anything, but you see that there's a relevance for it that way, and angling a paper or something that way. This is going to depend on the context of your research and everything else that's there, but it's important to be paying attention to what are the current research trends in your field as well. I don't know if people have ideas of maybe buzzwords that are since COVID that have been coming around. Maybe you can either take off your microphone or unmute yourself, or in the chat, mention some types of buzzwords that you've noticed, either in general, not in your field, or maybe particularly in your field as well. I think, you know, you can use contract tracing too. If it's fine if there's repetitions, if there's things that you've heard a lot of as well, feel free to put that as well for things. But we're also curious to see for people's particular fields if there's things that they've noticed a shift in subject areas or keywords as well.
Maybe some new opportunity to collaborate with researchers from other discipline area. So while Prashant was talking, I also show you can do pretty much the same thing with IEEE database. You can search a term and quickly have an overview of the publication topics. It reflects the control vocabulary. These are terms that are assigned to a publication by humans when, well, some databases are using only algorithm to assign terms, but the control vocabulary, usually there is a person who's also adding some value, selecting more uniform terms to apply to a publication. So it's really important to use those terms that might be more, might bring you more luck to make your article visible when you decide which keywords you're going to use. It's like applying for a job, you know, when you have a job offer, you try to make sure that in your letter of application or in your CV, you will retrieve the same terms. You want to take advantage of that.
So it's interesting, somebody has put in, Karthik, a student I know from Sarah, has talked about papers that have been using computed tomography images for COVID-19 pneumonia. And I know a lot of other people in medical imaging that were working on, some people were already working on lung disease, like COPD, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and medical imaging with that. But there's other people that were working on algorithms on other organs, on other things to do with medical imaging. But because with COVID, diagnosing the lung is so important, they saw that their methodology could be used that way. So that, you know, searching out data sets and everything else that has to do with it and trying out things. So it's, thank you, Karthik. That's very, very interesting, actually, that segmentation tasks for pneumonia specifically, that has come up as well. And if anybody else has noticed any other trends, feel free to put them as well.
So usually your librarian can help you at the beginning of the process when you think about the main keywords. It's good to meet with the librarian to validate. Maybe we have some advice, we give some workshop on how to create a concept map and things like that. So if it's something that you feel you might, you know, use a little bit more, get more competency on that, I encourage you to reach out to your library. Another, just quickly, I want to talk about the UN goal for sustainability development. Is something that we start to see more and more in a funding opportunity. The labeling, you have to fit under this, sustainable development goal. So look at the vocabulary. If you feel that your research fit into one of the goals, well, it's good also to take advantage, use the terms to make sure that your work will be retrieved when funders or a reviewer are looking for a researcher to fit in those grant opportunity.
And I think there's been a lot of shifts in funding that have happened. Again, I know at the government there was a shift that way. So it's important for that aspect as well. Financing grants, scholarships, and everything else that way is to make sure that you're fitting criteria and the basically subject areas that are getting funding, and seeing how you can make a contribution to those things with your current research that exists.
The other aspect, if you're interested, we could discuss about. Person was talking about the authorship, the ethical implication of writing in group. There's a lot of issue in the scientific publication world about how do we evaluate, how do we give credit to different authors who contributed as a group on the same paper. In research evaluation, we often tend to look at the first authored publication or the last one. This trend, the way we put the order of the authors on a paper might be influenced by the disciplines. Usually in engineering in North America, it's common that the first author, it's like the main principal author of a paper, and the last author is the supervisor. It's not true in every country. We have professors here who come from other parts of the world, and they mention, it's not good for me when you evaluate research this way, because I can be the third author on a paper and I have done a major contribution. So what I would like to have you maybe share your thoughts, discuss about is, do you think, well, it's fair to evaluate research, to evaluate contribution based on the order of the author on a paper? Do you have some ideas how we can make sure that her contribution, we get the recognition for it? And yeah, I don't know if anyone's here would like to share some thoughts about these aspects.
Even if you've had an experience where it didn't follow that normal model, I'm saying normal, but engineering disciplinary model of first author is often the student and the last author is the supervisor, or if those all your publications have been that way as well.
And while you think about that, I'll just continue about the aspect, the more ethical implication of, making sure if you decide to collaborate with some researcher, you do it for the good reason. There's a trend because, there is so much pressure on researcher to publish more, publication, to get opportunity, to get a promotion and all that, to get tenure. We have this phenomenon called a gift authorship, where you actually invite people. It could be in an exchange of some money, but you invite them to have their name on your paper without the author having done any effort, any contribution to it. There's also
honorary, yeah,
honorary authorship. Thank you. That you as a way to thank somebody, you let him have his name on a paper where the contribution is not there. I see that Sharon wants to talk, to discuss.
Yes, so all I can say is that in my experience with other disciplines and different institutes, different countries, the author publication listing, it varies a great deal. Many places, they don't put emphasis on first author or last author. They put their names alphabetically. And then they will designate one person to be follow-up for all post questions, etc., etc. So that seems to be all right. But it is incumbent upon the publication and the authors to ensure that everyone is well aware of their contribution and the other authors, co-authors' work, so they understand what it is. Otherwise, there's a potential, like you mentioned, the gift authorship, that when they are questioned about it, they cannot answer the question. Then it makes the first author suspect, and then it devalues their work. So there are no universal rules, and I would advocate that there should be universal rules. Sometimes it's a problem. I used to work in a particle physics lab, and there was one paper with 800 authors. I mean, the first 7-8 pages was just the author name, because everyone did something on the experiment or made an instrument for it, and it took years. They got a good result, but in this case, everyone knew what was the whole experiment, what was other people's contribution, what was theirs, and how it mattered. And that's a very high standard. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks very much. And I think for me, that blew my mind. I know some very long author lists, but that's probably the longest that I've heard of. And it's very interesting too, like what Judith is about to show is that some journal, because you were talking about journal requirements, that depending on the disciplines and what journals, some are starting to require that contribution is explicitly stated at the beginning of a manuscript, and there's different types of roles that can be assigned to them as well. So maybe I'll let Judith talk about the credit system that she has open.
Yes, well,
here.
just before I see that Naga has raised a hand.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to, I mean, it was too much to write, so I thought I'll just speak. No, I noticed two trends in most of the machine learning conferences, that particularly if two students are working, typically they're PhD students, if two students are working, they, apart from the, I mean, in addition to the number, like 1, 2, and 3, they also put a star beside the number to say that it's equal contribution. If you see that footnote, it's an equal contribution. And one other thing that that's particularly, I mean, it was fun to read, because there were, in one particular paper, there were like 8 authors, and they said that all had worked equally in that paper. So they chose a random name generator. I mean, they put a name, they use a program to decide which of the authors will be first. And they had written all this in the footnote, and it was fun to read. I mean, people are doing all sorts of things to show that they're equal in what they're doing, and the position of the name, the order of the names are just random. And yeah, it's those, and it's only in those particular cases, but most of the time it's like a star beside the number to say that it's an equal contribution. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
Karthik,
what I wanted to share.
Karthik, yeah, this is Sharon here. Interesting
Yes.
ideas, but I think what is really required is that instead of different disciplines, and within a discipline, different journals having too much diversity or a variation in their requirements, it makes it hard. What we should all advocate, and other disciplines and other journals, is they have a more uniform set of these kind of authorship listings or criteria. Yeah, authorship criteria. It should be more uniform. Then you know where how everything stands. If different journals and different things have different criteria, it makes it even more hard.
Yeah, I totally agree. It differs. I mean, this is the trend that I've only seen in 2 or 3 particular conferences. Yeah, I don't know about the journals, so yeah, I guess there should be one unified guideline, a set of guidelines that, that maybe tell something about this.
Yeah, I think you're both those points are very, very important points, and it's true. And the random generator thing is very amusing. I've never heard of that before. But so I think what Judith is going to show is like a little bit of trying to get into some kind of a standardization of the type of author roles that are there. So Judith, I don't know if you want to.
Yes, well, both our participant made a nice introduction to this. Credit is actually one of the most advanced standardized way to give credit to. Obviously, it's not perfect, and in the past years we had many discussions depending, as Sharon said, if you come from a field, maybe one role won't mean the contribution won't be as significant for the same role in a discipline than in another discipline. So it's very hard to standardize those kind of a way to acknowledge the different contribution, but it's one step, I think, in the good direction. And maybe it's something that will evolve in the future. I hope so. Maybe it's something that will be very much linked to some journals. Actually, like Prashant said, there is at the moment editors that require, when you send your manuscript, to mention precisely what was the main role of each author. So it's a trend. We'll see how it would evolve. But if you want to have a look at the Credit website, it gives you some good inspiration if you want to put that in practice. So I don't know if someone else would like to comment on that, or on the unethical aspect of ghost writership or gift authorship.
I did notice that there's the whole thing of Ilshad wrote that in a paper there was a collaboration for a student colleague that was in the acknowledgements, and that's often a way also to acknowledge contributions. If in the presentation that I give, if you go to the references when I share the presentation, you'll see that the transparency part is very important in that, so that people that have contributed know from the very beginning that they're not going to be a co-author, that they'll be in the acknowledgements or something. I also know colleagues sometimes that are very thankful. They were surprised to be in the acknowledgements when they were working on things. So it is interesting also to look at acknowledgements. But yeah, if people have some comments or anything on contributor roles and the points that were also brought up by our other participants, feel free in the chat or to unmute yourself.
Sorry, do you know, like, if in a paper it's written, like near the author, it's written a cross? Like, what does it mean? I mean, not a star. I mean, sometimes it's a star and sometimes it's a cross. I mean, what is the difference between that?
I think often is just different symbols to talk about institutions. That's there. So sometimes you'll see, sometimes there'll be a numeration, like it'll be 1, 2, 3 or ABC, and sometimes they'll have an asterisk and it will be École de Technologie Supérieure, and then a cross and it'll be McGill University and something like that. So at least the ones that I've seen, it's usually that one. It might be that they're also using that symbol to talk about roles. So it's possible if you go down and they'll have the roles next to the symbols, but the thing to check is that it should be an index for something else, like a kind of a lookup table for some qualifier for the author that's there. But what Karthik was talking about is sometimes they'll have some authors and they'll say that they equally contributed. So they're joint first authors, and whether right or wrong, a part of your CV and when you're building up your careers, people ask how many first authored papers do you have, and I'm not going to comment on whether that's a good or bad thing, but this allows you, at least if it's multiple co-authors, to say that I was part of first co-author for a paper as well.
There is hope related to that unfairness of evaluating someone's realization based on the order of the author. It's not the same level in every country, but I know in Canada, we're starting to see more and more reaction from granting, please, governmental granting agency to ask a researcher to mention which contribution they think are the more significant for them, and not only, you know, a scientific article published in high impact journals. They want to know their contribution and why, what are the benefits related to that contribution. And we encourage evaluator to look at other type of contributions. Sometimes the best way to communicate your research, the result, to read the user group, is to share your result in other form than the traditional scientific article. So there is a lot of campaign to increase awareness. I don't know if some of you heard about DORA, the San Francisco Declaration, which is basically saying, you know, we should stop evaluating researcher performance based on the impact of their journals they are publishing in. And yeah, it's something that we are seeing trends to change the way we evaluate research, but unfortunately, it's still quite present in you know, in the major national evaluation framework, like in UK, in Australia. We don't have a major one in Canada, thankfully. But the funding that universities are receiving, it's based on the performance of their researcher, based on their first author paper. So yeah, I encourage you to, you know, to read about those issues and try to take action if you want the situation to improve. So if no one else wants to comment on this part, maybe we can discuss about journals, strategy to when you cite other research. Do you care about which journals it was published in? Do you feel that you can trust all the journals indexed in the IEEE Explorer, for instance? Do you have any tricks on trying to find the best, to quickly identify the best, most relevant research based on the source, the journals?
Maybe to start, people can just either unmute yourself or in the chat just say, like, how do you normally decide just where to publish? And it can be just, I know many different strategies, but I'm just curious to see how even the people that have published before, how they decided where they were publishing. And it could be as simple as a supervisor saying publish here, but I'm curious to hear how people decide.
Maybe the closest related fields, like not closest related, but if the papers which I, for example, my work mostly take notes from or based on the results of, and I publish there as well.
So you go on in your reference manager software and you look at the journals that come up the most often, the paper that you read, and get, that's a good point. Research related to your work. Anyone else has other strategy?
So Iman has said the topic and the processing time. Now I'm curious, Iman, are you looking for a quicker processing time or a longer processing time?
An acceptable one, because there is some papers who takes months and then you get major reviews and then you get other months. So if we are a PhD students and we want to have like a number of papers to graduate, then I'd rather go with one that is quicker, honestly.
Right.
Yes, that's a good point. This information is not always easy to find. Sometimes you can see on paper published in a journal the submission date, the revision, the acceptation, and the publication date. So it gives you a general idea or how long it takes between the time you submit and the time the paper is actually published. But this information is not available. Don't be shy to write to the editor-in-chief, to the support to author, to ask those questions. It's something you can, I encourage you to do. And another question for you, when do you decide the journal, which journals to send you will try to send, to have your manuscript published in? Is it something that you keep for the end when your article is pretty much done, or it's something that you plan ahead at the beginning of the research process?
And I think with that, there might even be a good
Actually,
intention of doing that, or and what happens. So sorry, go ahead.
Actually, it depends on the type of the journal that you are publishing in it. For example, some journals need to have a simulation result with experimental validation. So first of all, I look forward to achieve my goal with the simulation and the result and everything, and then I start writing my article. And mostly all the journals that I look for are related, of course, to my research field and must have a good reputation. So basically, I publish in IEEE transactions, and they are suggested by my supervisor or my co-supervisor.
Okay, excellent. Sandy, can I ask you, how do you define a good reputation? Is there any tricks you use?
There is, I don't know what I don't remember actually the technical word, but there is like an index or a reference number for the journal. So the impact factor actually. So from the impact factor, you can know how much your journal is having a good reputation or not. And actually during my DGA 1033, so when I presented to my professor and the jury members the list of the journals, so they accepted this list based on the impact factor of these journals. So we cannot publish anywhere. It's not only about publishing and getting accepted articles, it depends also where we are publishing. So this is the rules of my supervisor. So he doesn't accept publishing anywhere, just for having published articles.
I see a lot of, well, people.
And this makes it a little bit harder because yeah, the reviewers are more tough. Yeah.
So the pressure coming from supervisor to pick journals with impact factors, that means that those journals are indexed in the Web of Science database, because that's the only citation index that attribute impact factors. Just one advice before I let Naga talk. If you pick a journal and on the journal's website is claiming to have this amount of impact factors, make sure you double check. If you have access to Web of Science, you can go to the journal citation report and make sure that the value is right, because unfortunately there's a lot of illegitimate journals that, you know, advertise having an impact factors to attract authors, and they don't. So exactly. And thank you Sandy for sharing.
Thank you.
And Naga?
Yeah, so mine is a question actually. I was wondering if the impact factor is a good metric to judge a journal's reputation, because I see some of the, I mean, recent trends that I don't know about Canada, or even it is in Canada, that they're moving away from looking at impact factors, because that one number solely is sometimes, as you said, can be illegitimate, and if there's no trace of it in the Web of Science, then I mean, yeah, it's again the question of how well is, I mean, how believable is that number? So I don't know if my question makes sense, but if you have anything to suggest.
That's a really good question, Naga, and I give a whole workshop just about the limits of the bibliometrics.
I was about to say
indicators.
you asked the right person because Judith knows a lot about this actually.
But I was quickly mentioning about DORA. DORA is one initiative that try to decrease this influence of the impact factors to evaluate researcher performance, but it's still very much present. It's still an indicator that is used. Probably all your supervisor that have a long career in front of them, they have been told and they keep on using the impact factors as a way to quickly select journals that maybe have a longer reputation, are more prestigious. There is many limits to the impact factors. You need to understand how it's calculated. Basically, it's taking the number of citation, the total number of citation received by a journal in 1 year for the citable documents published in the same journals the 2 previous year. And it's just it's just a calculation. We know that maybe 20% of the journals get 80% of the citation, roughly. So it doesn't mean that all the research published is high quality. It's just really a quick, easy to read indicator to try to discriminate between journals, but there is so many limits. Journals indexed in Web of Science database, it's based on a selection. Not all the journals can be indexed in the database, so can have an impact factors. Journals dealing with more regional issue, journals in other language than English, they don't have much chance to get indexed. So I'm going to stop here because I could talk for an hour about the limits of the impact factors, but I think the important is to question those criteria. Only looking at the impact factors to pick journals, it's not enough. But at the same time, if you pick a journals with an impact factor, it means that it's indexed in Web of Science in one of the major scientific database. So it gives you more chance to have your article visible. If you publish with a journals, which is very recent, it's not well indexed in major database, it might make your research harder to retrieve. So I will stop on that. I don't know if I answered the question, Naga.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the detailed answer. Yes, yeah. I mean, I was expecting the same thing, that one metric is not enough to judge journals' words. And yeah, and I was also wondering, it's a quick question, so I'll take a bit time. So can we do the indices also show which papers are most cited? I mean, if a journal has, suppose, 100 papers, can we also see that a particular paper, how many times has it been cited? And to know for ourselves whether the impact factor is whether it is correctly measuring what we are supposed to see.
I'm going to really quickly show you, if you have access, I don't know if you're probably not all from ETS, if you have access to Web of Science, you can look that information in the journals. I don't know if you see well here, journal citation report. Only journals that are part of the collection, the Web of Science core collection, are present in the journal citation report. And you can really see the calculation, the detail of the calculation. It's really based on all the citation in that citation index. I don't know if you have a name of a journal. I'll just try with IEEE, let's say IEEE Communication Magazine. So here you have the details for the last full year, 2019. You can see the value, you can see the number of citations received and the number of documents published in. I see that it's 12, so I think I will stop. If people are interested, reach out and write to me, and I'll give you the schedule of the workshop I give on bibliometrics indicators. Because
I posted it in the chat as well.
Excellent.
So it's and I just wanted to make a very quick point also, because there's a point made about the publication cycle as well, of wanting to have a reasonable turnaround for putting a manuscript in, but you also have to be careful of conferences that publish too short a publication cycle. It should make you wonder about the peer review process that's going on there. So it's all things to kind of keep in mind when doing things. So yeah, it's noon right now. So I know we've been going on for a long time, and we're very glad to have the sharing that people did during the workshop as well. It helps us understand everything that's going on. What Judith has put on the screen as well is that there is an event coming up related to COVID, and it's a topic of diversity and inclusion during COVID, where there's a very well-known researcher, Vincent Larivière, who's going to present on that topic. That is in French, what's going on, and we can put this link in the chat. And I'm going to also do a presentation that will be bilingual, that's talking more about how to define the scope of your research project, and thinking about messages that you need to give, a bit more on scientific communication during that as well. So thanks we're 1 minute over, but thanks very much for everybody for participating in this. I hope it was useful in some way. It was a little organic, the way that we did things, but when I send the presentation, our contact information will be there. So as Judith said, feel free to reach out. And what we'll try to do too is all the links and things that were shared in the chat and other things that we've mentioned, we'll try to put that all together with the presentation as well, so you can have access to the different resources that were there. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Thanks.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye, Sandy. Thanks.
So we did it without the breakout rooms.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's what often happens with these things, is near the end is where people feel more comfortable to share and talk, but that's good too.
Yeah, we had some good contribution from the
Yes.
participants. It's great.
Thank you guys for the beautiful presentation. It was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Iman.
Actually, I have a question, but well, it was noon, so I didn't ask. Is there any website where I can check, for example, the processing time, other than just mailing the editorship?
You mean a list of different journals with,
like the IEEE
Go ahead,
ones,
yeah.
for example?
You mean the delay between the submission and the publication?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that is put together somewhere on a website. Unfortunately, it's more and more common that editor will put it on every paper, and it might be different for the same journal. It might be different for every article.
Mhm.
But usually, if it's a normal submission time around 6 months to 8 months, you will see it on the paper. What I tend to notice is when some journals, they might accept a manuscript after 2 years. It might take a very long time. You usually do not advertise, and the unlegitimate journals where they claim to peer review, to do some peer review, and they don't, obviously, because they publish immediately after you send your manuscript. They will be really, they will, build their the author, they will build a list of author based on that criteria to attract them. So they will put it sometime on their website, quick publication delayed, but yeah, there's no database gathering that information. We've seen also with the COVID situation, all the research related to COVID was quicker to be accepted and published, with the implication that sometimes the time for doing the peer revision wasn't long enough. A lot of people are putting preprint of their article while waiting for the whole reviewing process to be over. So that's another aspect we were hoping to discuss, but we didn't have time. But yes, so sometimes reaching out to the author that seems to publish. One advice I give often to students is try to find out, maybe in the editorial committee, some researcher based nearby, based in Polytechnic or some institution closer, and usually they are professor. They want to help younger researcher to get more familiar with the publishing world. So you might have a quicker answer by reaching those people, writing to them personally. It gave some good result in the past. So
Okay.
no pressure if you had other advice.
Yeah, I would say that I've been to lectures by editors of big journals as well, and they encourage people to write the editorial, the editor-in-chief or the editorial board, to find out clarifications. Of course, the first thing to do is just to make whatever questions you have, to check the author guidelines, to check the website and try and find all that information to be sure. But editors are people too, as Judith is saying, is a professor or somebody there. So if you write a polite email and ask these questions, they usually will answer. And the thing that Judith was talking about as well is that you should be, when judging it, be careful as well, of journals that have too quick a turnaround time as well. So make sure that when you're investigating a journal, that you're also reading articles that are there, seeing who cites those things. Is it a lot of auto citation that goes on in that journal? Because the quality of the journal will also impact your work in terms of diffusion, because a higher quality journal will have a higher reach. People will trust it more. And even if it takes a little bit longer, if you end up publishing in one of these journals, your work might be known more. So it's always a balance. And of course, I know the pressure as a PhD student, to get things out as much as possible. And, and of course, as much as you can discuss it with your co-authors as well.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other
I don't know if there was any other questions. We were free to,
I guess it's all people from the organizing committee left. If you have any comments, feel free to let us know. I hope it answer the need for the activity.
I like the interactivity. Actually, it was very good. Like, it kind of attracted the members to participants to participate in the presentation. So it was amazing. From my side, I'm very satisfied. Thank you very much.
That's great, Evan. I'm very glad. Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay, well,
So,
like
I guess if there's...
said, you're gonna send the
Yeah, I was just saying.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that if there's no other questions or anything, maybe we'll send the presentation along, and we'll kind of just out of the chat compile a little bit of the links and everything, so you can send it along to the participants as well. And thanks very much for inviting us to give this workshop as well. It was fun for us and made us think about a lot of issues as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So should I know that it's still recording. I guess I wasn't the one that started the recording. So maybe actually I won't stop it, because I think whoever's recording probably.
No, it's Christian. Christian?
Okay.
I don't know.
He might have stepped away.
He is recording.
So you know what? Because I am host, so maybe I'll make somebody else.
I think
host.
If you leave, you're gonna close the meeting. So
yeah, exactly.
It's gonna automatically
stop the recording.
Maybe you should make IEEE Montreal section the host again.
Okay, I'll do that. Good idea. Make host.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave. So have a nice afternoon, everybody.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Have a nice day.
Okay. Bye-bye, Judith. Okay, perfect. I've made IEEE Montreal section, the host. So I think the recording
Okay.
should be fine.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Iman. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
We'll
Have a
talk
nice
later.
day. Bye.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we finish this meeting, I guess, right?
Yes, it's over, but I don't know where is Christian, so I will leave too.
Okay.
And
so,
he will finish the recording and close the meeting, let's say.
yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have a nice day. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.